COVID-19 at a Toronto elementary school.
They try their best, but they cannot prevent it completely.
19 cases of the virus are discovered at Thorncliffe Park Public School after hundreds of asymptomatic students and staff get tested. Plus,
the numbers of people asking for help has increased.
the need is greater than ever, but donations are down. United Way putting out an urgent call for donations ahead of the holidays as it struggles with a big shortfall this year. And a dark and stormy night in the city. A rain and snow mix set to bring December in like a lion. Good evening, I'm Kelda Yoon. Thorncliffe Park Public School in the city's East End is dealing with 19 coronavirus infections tonight. The confirmed cases were discovered just days after hundreds of students and staff were tested as part of a pilot program to do asymptomatic testing at schools in areas with high infection rates. Ali Chiasson reports.
Public Health attended Thorncliffe Park Public School last week, conducting tests on Thursday and Friday. The results found 19 cases, 18 students and 1 staff member.
Only my daughter today going to school.
Yasser Nadaf's son is in one of the 14 classes that are now self-isolating at home.
Sad. What we can do.
They are overwhelmed, I can tell for sure, and they need a lot of support.
Toronto Public Health isn't closing the school.
My understanding is that the transmission is more in the community as opposed to inside the school, and that was one of the key factors in making that decision.
The positivity rate is about 4%, much lower than the 16% rate in the surrounding community. But we're not testing asymptomatic people in the community. So the findings at Thorncliffe Public School could suggest we don't know the full scope of asymptomatic cases in our neighborhoods.
We've been very fortunate that outbreaks have been pretty small in schools and well controlled due to all the layers of protection.
The Minister of Education says this is an example that their new COVID testing program is working.
To ensure, as was done in the case of Thorncliffe, that cases are ultimately identified and isolated from the school to prevent, to mitigate further spread.
The opposition says asymptomatic testing should have happened sooner.
Community spread is growing in Brampton, in Mississauga, Kitchener-Waterloo, Etobicoke, Humber River, Weston, Black Creek, Scarborough, Windsor. Thursday's last-minute plan with those remaining federal dollars simply isn't going to get the job done.
Those are all communities where families have to make tough decisions.
Yeah, I think school should be open. Because I see last year my kids were not studying well, and it was just a mess of 1 year of their education.
For my son, we always make sure that he follows the hygiene rules, keeping the mask at all times.
The asymptomatic testing at schools in hotspots across Ontario will continue over the next 4 weeks. Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
Ontario is reporting 1,746 new cases of COVID-19 today. It also reported 8 more deaths. And just like the first wave of the pandemic, many of the deaths in this second wave are happening in long-term care. Queen's Park reporter Mike Crawley has more.
A gray day in Toronto as the city enters its second week of lockdown and November draws to a close. It's been the deadliest month for COVID-19 in Ontario since the spring. Across the province, 520 people with confirmed cases of the virus died this month. More than half of them lived in long-term care. Premier Doug Ford didn't mention the death toll in today's news conference, so we asked him about it.
Well, my heart breaks, and my condolences and prayers and thoughts go out to all families that lost loved ones, not just in long-term care, but right across the province.
Ford says the government is looking at ways to further protect nursing home residents.
We're never going to stop working to make sure we secure and lock down these long-term care homes as tight as possible.
The government is facing criticism for continuing to allow facilities to put seniors 3 or 4 to a room.
Those poor residents are effectively sitting ducks because the second one of those, individuals in that wardroom gets COVID. I mean, it's a slippery slope at that point.
The main way the virus is getting into homes is through infected staff. At this facility, in one of Toronto's hardest hit neighborhoods, 29 staff have tested positive this month.
People assume that you can place this iron ring around homes, that, you know, they're these completely sealed environments, and that's just not how it exists.
Experts say the key to keeping COVID-19 out of long-term care is slowing the spread in the community. But that's not happening yet. Ontario's 7-day average trend of new confirmed cases hit its highest level yet today.
These trends, of course, remain concerning. The fact we've had record high numbers on Friday and continued high numbers over the weekend, and today is troubling.
One other troubling number for Ontario today, 618 COVID patients in hospital, the highest it's been through the second wave. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
Toronto reported a record number of new COVID-19 cases today.
643. It's a big number, the highest I have reported to you. And it is something to think about very carefully.
There are 249 people in hospital in the city. 48 are in intensive care. Dr. Davila says it's too soon for this current lockdown, which began just a week ago, to have a significant impact on the number of new cases. She's asking all residents to continue staying home as much as possible. And tomorrow is Giving Tuesday, a global campaign that encourages people to give back to their community. In the GTA, United Way is putting out an urgent call for help. It says it has seen a big drop in donations compared to the same time last year. And meanwhile, the need has increased. Dahlia Ashry has more on how the pandemic has impacted the organization and those who rely on them for help.
Understandable.
Daniela Zanotti, CEO of United Way Greater Toronto, says in 25 years he's never had to put out such an urgent call for donations. He says they are seeing a 25% drop in donations compared to last year.
25% reduction is a gap of over $25 million. And that has direct impact on agencies right across Peel, Toronto, and York region.
Affecting centres like Toronto's West Neighbourhood House, who rely on organizations like United Way this year more than ever.
The numbers of people asking for help has increased, especially for food and financial information and tax stuff.
Maureen Fair, Executive Director of West Neighbourhood House, says due to COVID-19 restrictions, most of their locations have had to close. Instead, they have been going directly into communities, safely, or connecting with community members virtually and over the phone.
All age groups, low-income people through no fault of their own, on top of the experiences of poverty now facing all the implications from the darn pandemics.
Mental health, domestic violence, food insecurity, homelessness are just some of the issues exacerbated by the pandemic. Fair says the center has been doing the best they can to help.
We're trying to keep people out of hospital. The last thing our hospitals need is more people coming in. So our home care, our food security issue, all sorts of things we're trying to take care of so the medical system can catch its breath.
Zanotti is hopeful people will step up this holiday season.
We believe that, again, people will come through for their friends and neighbors this year. At a time when we've never needed it more, we know that people will respond, because that's what people in the Greater Toronto Area do. Generous, caring, contributing for their neighbors and friends.
Any donation made to United Way Greater Toronto before December 31st will be matched by its senior volunteers. Dahlia Ashry, CBC News, Toronto.
A soggy and windy one out there tonight. This rain will be mixing with snow as we head into the overnight. Let's go now to our meteorologist, Colette Kennedy. And Colette, December coming in with a fury.
Thanks, Kelda. Well, here we are. We're headed into the beginning of December and a storm situation kind of to match the season, right? As we are looking at, I know many areas, it's still a bit of a mix, a rain-snow mix, but changing over to some wet snow through the overnight, even for the city. Now, further east, it's a different situation. I'm saying over towards Cobourg and on towards Kingston. Through those regions, it's much more of a rain event, but windy conditions, so all around, we are not looking at good travel conditions, especially in these snow areas with the blowing snow and reduced visibility. And it's not just tonight and tomorrow through the day, but this lingers into Wednesday morning. The highest snow accumulations, well, many of these are going to be right where folks would want them, into some ski country. So we'll take a look at that in just a moment, that 30 to potentially 50 centimeters. And yes, as I say, it will be over for the city. We'll actually likely see some clearing into the whole GTA by the time we get to Wednesday afternoon. But showing you the warnings that we have associated, the winter storm warning. So this is our area here where we're looking at those highest amounts. So northern Grey County, we're talking about the Blue Mountains here. This is going to be just an absolute dumping of snow. But again, it's kind of spread out. It's still not going to be good for any kind of travel, especially anywhere around Georgian Bay or around the Bruce Peninsula for the next few days. So just be very, very aware of that. Owen Sound, of course, you're going to be seeing this too. Now, the areas of white, that's our snowfall warning. So you can see that extends out a little bit further. In general, 20 to 30 centimeters. All told, once you add it all up. And you can see back here towards Sarnia, London, this region too, we're talking about that snowfall warning. Elsewhere, it's a special weather statement because conditions are not going to be good. The roads are going to be slick. Visibility at times will be reduced. And that's where we're looking at that 15 to 20 centimeters. Certainly much lesser amounts for the city, and I'll get to that in just a moment. But just showing you kind of the progression as this moves through. And why I say it's more of a rain event with some slightly milder temperatures, slightly milder air further towards the east, but not the case, especially as we're seeing the temperature hovering right around freezing and in cases where it's going to be dropping just below overnight tonight. We'll start to see at times some tapering off here, not the case up into our kind of target area. We'll see some tapering, but then it kind of wraps around and comes back, and that's why I say even into Wednesday morning for the GTA, it'll just be some lighter flurries. But look at how that clearing will actually begin on Tuesday night into Wednesday morning for southwestern Ontario, and then we'll see it peeling out. Once it moves, it's being blocked, but once it does move and that ridge of high pressure leaves and allows the low pressure system to take off, it will clear pretty rapidly. Just some ideas of snowfall potential. Again, likely over 30 centimeters up here around Owen Sound, just to the west of London. You'll probably see more than this, but for the city of Toronto, we're looking at 5 to 10 centimeters. So wet that most of it will be just kind of washing away, or even it's going to be melting on contact. Your winds on contact, your winds here, they're going to be coming in from the north to northwest and eventually turning towards the west. So there's going to be some lake enhancement for sure because of the moisture there, but also the winds across the lake. Overnight tonight, look at what your temperatures are like right there just below and then just above the freezing mark with those winds from the west and northeasterly winds tonight around the Golden Horseshoe. Look at tomorrow afternoon. 1 to 2 degrees, the best we're going to do, probably up to 2 actually for Toronto. And then checking out the next several days, temperatures running below seasonal, but at least we'll get past this system by Wednesday afternoon.
Well, like Dwight said earlier, I'm glad I got my winter tires on. Thanks so much, Colette.
The weather is brought to you by Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. We test, so it runs. It's hard to stop a train.
Tragedy at an Etobicoke seniors home after a woman was killed in a fire at Griggs Manor. Crews were called to the seniors home on Cavill Avenue just before 11:30 in the morning. The fire broke out in a unit on the top floor of the 7-story building.
The apartment fully involved with heavy smoke and heavy flame, and they aggressively attacked the fire to contain it to the unit and remove all the smoke. We had a backup crew and a search and rescue crew that sadly found an occupant in the unit.
Firefighters tried to rescue the woman inside, but she was later pronounced dead at the scene. Police and the fire marshal's office are trying to determine the cause. And a man is facing charges after an explosion at an East End home. Crews arrived at the home in the Woodbine and O'Connor area just after 5 p.m. on Friday. Windows and a door were blown out by the force of the blast. Fortunately, there were no serious injuries. Police have charged a 38-year-old with 2 counts of arson. We are learning more about the man behind the deadly Toronto van attack, and it's coming from perhaps the most important witness at Alec Manassian's trial. The defense has called a psychiatrist who is expected to testify that Manassian should be found not criminally responsible. Trevor Dunn has more.
Dr. Alexander Westphal is a Yale University psychiatrist who specializes in autism and the law. He's the key witness for the defense and is presenting evidence in favor of Manassian being found not criminally responsible due to his autism. To start with, Westphal's testimony laid out a profile of the man who has admitted to killing 10 people and injuring 16 others in the 2018 attack. It's based on extensive assessments Westphal did with Manassian and his family after the incident. As a boy, Westphal testified that Manassian was awkward and afraid of girls. As he got older, he became fixated on certain TV characters, including Mr. Bean. The court heard that Manassian would closely imitate the way he spoke and moved.
Oh, hi. Good to see you there.
As a young man in college, Westphal testified that Manassian's social problems worsened. He was unable to speak to waitresses, he testified, had a minimal social circle, and no romantic relationships. Westphal told the court that Manassian's autism is severe, but it isn't always evident. He testified that Manassian's intelligence doesn't transfer to social situations and daily life. If you sit down with Mr. Manassian, you get the sense that he's someone who has a lot of words and is highly articulate. And in a sense, it's quite easy to get distracted by that veneer and to lose sight of how disabled he is. The key argument the defense is trying to make is that Manassian's autism was so severe that he didn't know the van attack was wrong. A lack of empathy towards other people, a symptom of autism, is one way the defense is trying to prove this. Westphal performed a test on Manassian designed to measure empathy. Scores at or above 30 are considered normal. The court heard that Manassian scored 22. His testimony continues tomorrow. Trevor Dunn, CBC News, Toronto.
It does surprise me. In fact, I'm pretty angry about it. This is completely unacceptable behavior.
After the break, residents in Toronto and Peel are entering their second week of lockdown, but that didn't stop at least 60 people from gathering at a house party in Mississauga over the weekend. We'll have more on that coming up. Plus,
if you're not doing any paid parking enforcement and folks aren't paying for parking, it's not surprising that revenue is going to be down.
the pandemic is behind a staggering plunge in city parking revenue. Details on that after the break as well. Dozens of fines were handed out in Mississauga over the weekend after Peel police broke up a packed house party. At least 60 people attended the gathering, despite Peel Region being under a lockdown. As Greg Ross tells us, the party took place at a home that was rented through Airbnb.
Well, I'm very hopeful that this will be a $100,000 fine each. That's the message I want to send.
Mississauga Mayor Bonnie Crombie hoping for the maximum fine under the COVID-19 bylaws for two people charged with hosting a house party in this neighborhood near 9th Line in Deepwood Heights Saturday night. According to police, there were at least 60 people in attendance. Many escaped when police arrived, but police say they still handed out an additional 27 tickets to guests for breaking public health rules.
Does it still surprise you that people are doing this?
It does surprise me. In fact, I'm pretty angry about it. This is completely unacceptable behavior.
The party was at a short-term rental home that the hosts were able to book on Airbnb.
I am a little concerned about the Airbnb in the neighborhood.
This man who lives nearby says he would like to see more regulations on short-term rentals.
There just doesn't seem to be any accountability.
10:25, there's a party going on.
It's not the first time we've seen something like this during the pandemic. In some cases, neighbors have posted videos showing cars lined up on the streets. One in Brampton even turned violent. 4 people were shot at this house in July, also rented through Airbnb.
I really don't know what these people were thinking. Let's go rent a house in the middle of a pandemic and host a big party.
Since the start of the current lockdown, the City of Toronto has put a freeze on any new short-term rental reservations, with the exception of people who are in need of housing. So far, Peel has not followed suit.
Do you think that you might adopt something similar to what Toronto is doing with Airbnb?
Well, we'll certainly take a look at it. I mean, this isn't acceptable in the best of times.
Mayor Crombie says it will be on the agenda at the next City Council meeting in Mississauga.
We will be bringing this forward for discussion on how to tighten up this framework so this type of activity cannot exist.
In a statement from Airbnb, a spokesperson said they are in touch with city officials about the incident over the weekend. They also said that the listing has been deactivated. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
We're getting a clearer picture tonight of the financial impact the pandemic is having on one of the city's key revenue streams, paid parking.
They're staggering, but they're not surprising. Let's remember that for several months of the pandemic, we actually weren't doing any paid parking enforcement across the entirety of the city. So if you're not doing any paid parking enforcement and folks aren't paying for parking, and you do that for several months, it's not surprising that revenue is going to be down.
The Toronto Parking Authority will contribute more than $4 million to the city's coffers this year. The agency was expected to generate almost $60 million, and that amount could fall to close to zero next year. One possibility for making up some of that lost revenue, the city is looking at converting hundreds of spaces that currently allow 1 hour free parking to paid spots.
Like, people are in need in this community. There are so many people in this community that are underserved.
A community fridge in Parkdale has a new home after the city shut it down last week. The happy update after the break. A community fridge in Parkdale that was shut down by the city has found a new home, and it's all thanks to the community.
The most rewarding part for me is that I've never asked anybody to do anything. It's always been people just reaching out, whether it's like, hey, I have a truck, can I move something? Hey, I have a fridge, can you put this somewhere? Hey, I have a business, you can put a fridge in front of mine. Hey, I have some money to buy some food.
Oh, it's important. Like, people are in need in this community. There's so many people in this community that are underserved. I have some extra. That's what you should do, right?
According to the city, the fridge had to be removed due to public safety concerns, sanitation issues, and its abandoned appliances bylaw. The city encouraged people to instead participate in one of the many city-affiliated programs. But the community says the fridge is not abandoned, it's needed, and they were able to put the fridge on private property.
Pandemic is really highlighted and underscored the ways that our current systems are failing folks. So we need to have quick, rapid responses to problems.
The more we tried to rectify this or work around it, the more days that the fridge wasn't there, and the more days that there was people that were relying on this fridge every day that weren't being able to use it and were going hungry.
For now, Community Fridges Toronto says their goal is to keep people from going hungry during the pandemic and to keep the community fridges full. And that is our show for you tonight. Thank you so much for watching. We leave you tonight with these pictures from outside Union Station. For the next month, the Front Street Plaza will be home to an outdoor glacier wall installation celebrating our northern climate. It's pretty cool to look at, and it's for a good cause too. For every social post of the installation that uses the hashtag TDUnionHoliday, Union and TD will donate $1 to the United Way Greater Toronto to a maximum of $10,000. So maybe snap a pic on your way by. Have a great night, everyone.